Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Python programming class. My name is Austin Lassiter, and I am going to be the instructor for the next 10 weeks that we'll be doing this class together. Great to see your faces, those of you who have the cameras on. You're not required to have the camera on. I will keep mine on the entire time. You can turn yours off at any time as you feel free to do so. But just a big hello and a shout out to everybody here. Um, Go ahead and give me some indication, either here on Zoom or in Slack, that you can hear me. I'm just going to drop a note in here. Can you hear me okay? And I just dropped that into Slack if you want to respond with a thumbs up. And I'm going to assume that's the case. Fabulous. Okay. So, and I'm going to go ahead and turn off the volume on the second computer here. Let me go ahead and start by sharing my screen, and we'll dive right into the materials for today's class. Okay, and hopefully, yep, fantastic. Everybody can hear me okay, and hopefully you can all see my screen as well. Please feel free to unmute. I'm going to invite one person. I'm just going to pick somebody here from the group, and let me see here. I've got to get back to my list of participants. At the top of the list, Alex Garrett. I'm going to ask you to unmute, Alex, and do me a favor. Just go ahead and let me know that you can see my screen and that you can also hear me okay, Alex. Okay, let me try somebody else. How about Eric Chan? Eric, can you hear me okay, and can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can see your screen and I can hear you okay.
Okay, fantastic. Then I'm going to assume that's going for everybody. Just want to make sure that we were good to go with that first and foremost. So I want to give a big
Sorry, I hear you.
Okay, no worries. I'm glad you're here. And I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody up. I'm muting all. At any point in the class, feel free to unmute and ask a question. I like the class to be as interactive as possible. I like it when there are questions. I like it when you ask me to stop and go back and repeat something. I like it when you contradict me and say, hey, you know what? There's actually a better way to do this, because then I'll learn as well. But if you don't have a question or you don't have something to say, I'm going to ask that you please make sure your mic is muted, just in the interest of the whole group. Oh, well, I'm sharing my screen, and the very first thing that I want everybody to be familiar with is Slack. Probably many of you use Slack for your own company or for your own personal work. This will be the single primary means of communication throughout the class. And I wanted to start with Slack because if this isn't working, you won't have access to anything else. Um, so I'm just going to give a thumbs up here, and I'm going to ask you for a reaction. Give me a emoji reaction to this note. This will be a way that I foster interactivity throughout the class. When you respond, go ahead and try and give an emoji immediately beneath the reaction. Bob, thank you very much. It's also fine, of course, to respond with a second comment. Oliver, Alan, Winter, Stephen, all of you guys did so, and that's fantastic. But I think you'll find that the thread quickly gets very, very crowded, and you'll find yourself scrolling up and down if we use emojis in this way. So what I'm going to ask you to do is respond with an emoji and a reply this time in order to keep things tidy. So for emojis, you can go ahead and just, give me anything here. And then with a reply, you hit the reply in thread bubble to the right. And this is my answer. Okay. And I just wanted to go through this as kind of a practice of how we'll manage the course to keep Slack interactive, yet also tidy. So go ahead and give me an emoji. Thank you, Rim. Perfect. Respond with anything you want here. That works great. So we have just one Slack channel for this class. You'll notice that we're part of a larger Slack organization called General Assembly, Quarter 4, WC Tech and Data. And within that, there are a lot of sub channels for other classes, plus a general channel. The general channel is obviously where you can communicate across the company with other students and also instructors who are part of General Assembly. But everything for our class specifically will be in the Python 11.08 channel. It'll get a little bit messy. I understand that. We're going to do our best to keep it tidy, but that's just sort of the nature of Slack. If you ever want to talk with me directly, you can send me a direct message. I'm going to give an example of that right now. Let me just send one here to Oliver. I'm going to pick you at random. And I'm going to go ahead and say, hi, whoops. Right. And I'm getting down here to the lower box. Hi, Oliver. Okay, so now Oliver and I have a conversation that's going, and this is invisible to the rest of the class. And obviously you can include other people in here, but the rest of the group won't use this. Though Oliver, I'm sharing your response right now with the whole screen, of course. Thanks, appreciate that. I'm gonna ask that you use direct messages as sparingly as possible for key things like, hey, Austin, I'm gonna miss class, or you know, I'm behind in homework, or something else that you just want between myself and you. If you have a question about the material, something that you want clarification on, or you think that it could have gone another way, or you even have feedback for me, I really ask that you go ahead and you put it here in the main channel. We want to keep things as open as possible. And the reason for this is if you have a question, probably somebody else has a question as well. And they're going to learn from your research and your findings. And then they're also going to learn from my response. So if 5 people ask me, hey, Austin, how do I do a print statement in Python? I don't want to respond 5 times. I want to respond once and the whole class will learn. So let's try and keep those questions and responses as open as we possibly can here in the channel, and that'll make everybody learn together. I also strongly encourage you to respond to one another, and we'll have opportunities even in tonight's class to share some work. It's really important that we focus on peer sharing, that is to say, corresponding with one another, because though I'm an instructor, I certainly don't have all the answers. And many of you folks in the class could have a similar way or a better way. So we'll all learn together from that back and forth that's carried out here in Slack. Obviously, we'll keep it respectful, we keep it clean, but let's keep it busy. And also asynchronous. We have these 2 hours on Monday night and on Wednesday night, but throughout the week, I think you'll find that I'm quite active on Slack. I use Slack for my day job and I just have it open. So if you shoot me a note, I'll try and respond to you in the middle of the day if I'm able to do so. I really encourage you to go ahead and use Slack throughout the week. Thank you, Alan, for sharing that. Really great to have you with the group there in our GitHub repository. I'll add you in just a minute. Okay, so that is the first thing. The second thing I'd like to share is just a little bit about myself and who I am as your instructor and the company that I work for. So I'm just going to pull up my LinkedIn profile, and I do this just as a way of kind of visual introduction. Who am I and why am I teaching you the course? My name is Austin, and I grew up in the Midwest, but I now live just outside of Washington, D.C. with my family. I've worked here for many years. I'm currently a senior Python engineer at a company, a large startup here in Northern Virginia called Science Logic. I spend my entire day writing Python code for a really massive code base of a software product. Let me go ahead and open up the Science Logic page, just so you have a sense of kind of who is this guy that's teaching you. And that actually didn't work, but let's go to sciencelogic.com. Science Logic is a software development company that makes data science related software for tracking and monitoring IT environments. So we sell software to a lot of big enterprise companies that have server farms and want to kind of track all of that and maintain and see how it's going. And my role, together with a lot of other folks, is to write the code base that exists in the background for that product. So my day is spent doing a lot of the same things that you'll be learning in this class, maintaining Python libraries, writing Python functions, doing a lot of Python testing. Prior to that, I'm actually relatively new to this particular role, though I've been associated with them kind of in orbit for a while. I was also a data scientist for the Department of Defense and for Deloitte. And way back, I was actually a middle school teacher, quite a ways back. So I've really had teaching in my blood. It's something that I enjoy a lot. I've also been a data science instructor with General Assembly for about 3 years. And prior to that, I was a data science student, first in the part-time and then in the full-time program with General Assembly. And similar to many of you, I did that because I wanted to pivot in my career. I'm going to jump back over to Slack and look at some of your responses about why you mentioned that you're taking this course, those of you who filled out the surveys, right? So many of you said you wanted to learn a language, you wanted to diversify a portfolio, right? You wanted to learn how to automate processes at work, switch careers, self-improvement. Here's a response, want to see if this is a career I'd like to follow. All of these were responses that I also gave when I was a student back in 2017 in the part-time course. That's when I first started learning Python. I had never done any Python coding prior to that. I hadn't done any data science, though I certainly had done a lot of data analytics. And recently let go from a job. I was eager to pivot in my career and to expand my professional portfolio by adding a modern coding language, Python, to what I could offer to future employers. It was a really good career decision. It's really opened up a lot of doors for me. I love my current company. I love my role, writing code all day long. I have very few meetings. I have very little sales that I have to do, just all day long, me and the Python making pushes on Git. And I think that you will find that this pivot is also very helpful for you in your career. General Assembly specifically has been a big part of that, not just because of what I learned, but because of who I worked with. So let me pause there. Is there anybody who'd like to unmute for a second and just share a little bit about, briefly, one sentence or more about why you're here and what you're excited about seeing in the class over and above what you responded already? Okay,
I'll go.
sure.
My name is Oliver. I work for a nonprofit that builds hospitals in developing countries. There's a big need with aligning our equipment list from like architecture drawings to our inventory and our vendors. So I'm hoping to get better versed with Python so I can kind of fill that need. I'm excited just to see how I can manipulate software into kind of accomplishing what I need from.
Love it. Fantastic. Well, let me know how we can make this course tailor specifically to your needs and your goals, Oliver.
Thanks.
I'm not going to go through the whole group, but if there's anybody else who'd just like to share a feeling or a thought or something that you really want to avoid in this class, I'd love to hear about it, either here or on Slack.
Yeah, I guess I'll go real quick. I hope you guys can hear me. My name's Bob Douglas. I'm in Florida right now. I actually used to be a middle school teacher for a little while as well. I have your standard issue liberal arts education that I've gotten pretty much nothing out of to this point in my life. So I'm really looking to, I think it's really exciting to learn. Python's a great language and data science is the most exciting field, I think, going now. But I'm also, in a much more practical sense, excited to be able to learn some actual technical skills that are valued on the employment market.
Absolutely. And that was very similar to my own career path, Bob. So glad you're here. Liberal arts is great, but you want to pay those bills, and having that Python skill on top of it, my story as well. Is there anybody in the class who is really hoping to avoid something or something that you're saying, please don't let the class be like that? Any horror stories from previous online classes you've taken? Alex?
Yeah, I want to avoid like ambiguity and have more solid foundation of how the actual program works. as far as input and output.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you'll find that it's very cut and dry.
Yeah, that's what.
You know,
that's,
either the
that's,
code works
that's
or
what I
it doesn't.
wanna- Exactly.
And I'm sorry, I'm fooling around here with the mic, but absolutely, yep, I agree with you. And that's the beautiful thing about code is that there's no BS, right? Either it runs or it doesn't. So let's avoid that ambiguity. And I also try and do that as a teacher. At big picture, I'm going to try to not waste your time with silly stuff, but let's get right down to the meat, which reminds me, Alex, I'm glad you brought that up. In this class, we're going to have a wide variety of skill levels. I know that there are several of you that have never written a line of code in your life. There are a few of you that have some background with, similar tech tools, such as Excel, for example, or other similar coding languages. And I know there's one of you that actually is quite advanced in a lot of this material. So we've got a wide spread. As an instructor, there's only one of me and there's 19 of you. And I want to make sure that I'm not wasting anybody's time. I have tried to make sure that the materials are appropriate for beginners, but that there's a lot of material also for those who are high flyers and want to go faster than what I'm doing. So there's a floor, and then there's also a very high ceiling. As an instructor, I'll often be there at the floor. I'll often be there kind of working with the folks who are newest. For those of you who want to go faster, there is a lot of additional material that I'm going to give you access to that you can explore on your own, and then hit me up with questions outside of class, right? So I would recommend to take advantage of this time, a few things. First of all, first and foremost, give yourself a mentality that these 2 hours on Monday night and Wednesday night, they're just the beginning of the time that you're going to dedicate to this class. You're going to have to dedicate a lot of time to it if you want to meet your goals. During the class, I'll try and expose you to a lot of good information, and you'll come to me with questions. But after the class, there's going to be a lot of time where you're working on your own. You'll notice in the top left corner, I'm recording this session, and these recordings will be available to you. Many people learn better from recordings than a live session, right? Raise your hand if that's you. I don't know. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. See, the thing is, when I'm talking right now, you can't stop me. There's no pause button on my mouth, right? And if you need to step away and come back, you miss that step. But the recording is going to be there, and you can move at your own pace and maybe speed through the things you don't care about. But you also want to have that interactivity. So I'm going to be around for questions and to be able to talk to you. The video call is a good place for that. I'll also hang around after class for a little while to answer questions, but Slack is a great place to ask me questions. What we will try and do in this classroom setting is make it as interactive as we possibly can. But those materials and your self-study of them, that's really where the rubber is going to meet the road. I will say I'll try and make the class as interactive as possible, and I'll try and give a pulse check. So for example, I'm going to do one right now. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. So you'll see me do this from time to time. How's the pacing? And then I'll respond with some emojis. So we want maybe fire means too fast. Maybe some ice is going to mean too cold. And then maybe a beach is going to be just right. And go ahead and hit me right now. How's the pacing? Too fast, too cold, just right. Let's see that first straw poll. Good. And hopefully everybody's feeling that they're on the beach. Good. So you'll see me do that pretty frequently. I'll also frequently respond with other emojis just because I get tired of the thumbs up. I like to use desserts, wide variety of them. A dessert just means, hey, that's a positive thing. Good to go. All right, well, that's enough about kind of broad level introduction. Let's go ahead and move you into some materials. You should have access to, or you will need access to basically three things: Slack, which you all already have, Google Drive, and the third thing is going to be something called GitHub Enterprise specifically. And if you have not already done so, way up here at the top of the scroll, there's a note from Sophie, but specifically, please head to this link, and I'll post it again. And when you click on this link, about half of you have already done this, it opens up a page that asks you to create your account. Go ahead, do that now, give yourself a username and post it in Slack so I can add you to our GitHub Enterprise account and you'll have access to the materials. All right. So let me go ahead and move into the first of those. Well, the first is Slack, we've got already. The second of these is Google Drive. And you'll see, by the way, I posted this earlier, but before every class, I will make a note about the materials. This was a little further back. So this is the one. I'm going to reshare this again. Here are links to the materials for tonight's class, and I'm going to post that to everybody. You'll see this pop up before the beginning of every class, just as a reminder. And specifically, Google Drive and GitHub Enterprise, these are the two things you're going to need to have access to. I'm going to Google Drive now. And please tell me if you're not able to access this. I tried to share this with everybody. In my Drive, I've got several folders, but specifically for our class, we've got a course overview, lesson 1 and lesson 2. Let's dive into here really quickly. And you'll see that I've got a student roster. Your name should be on here. I think we had a couple of people who joined briefly afterwards, but hopefully you're on here and your contact information is correct. And if you want to, you can add your GitHub Enterprise handle to here, though I think I've gotten a lot of people already. And then we've got a lesson schedule. You can always refer back to this if you're not sure kind of what the topic is that we'll be seeing. We'll be doing 20 lessons going all the way to the 26th of January. We've got 4 breaks, 1 at Thanksgiving, 2 right around Christmas and New Year's, and 1 for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And then other than that, we'll always be here Monday, Wednesday from 8 to 10 Eastern, or what is that, 5 to 7 Pacific, right? I know you guys are really scattered all over the world. Let me pause there. Questions about this class calendar? And I'll make it nice and big. Go ahead and unmute if there's anything at a high level about the class calendar that you're unsure about.
Hey, Austin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, this is Eric. Hey, quick question. So I spoke to Sophie as well before the start of this class. I actually have 2 dates ahead, which I know of, which I won't be able to attend. So do I just send you a message later to let you know? How should I proceed there?
That's a great question, Eric. And I'll bet lots of people have exactly the same question. And I'm going to give you a short answer and a long answer, okay? And this is for you and everybody else. The short answer is no problem. The long answer is this. We know that attendance in the class is really essential for you to understand the material. And if somebody is just missing classes left and right, they're doing themselves a disservice in as much as they'll fall behind and they won't learn the material. So as a good instructor, I feel like I need to hold everybody accountable with regard to their attendance so that I know kind of how it's going, to do you a favor, right? So on that note, I will always take attendance at every class. And if you miss more than 3 classes, General Assembly reserves the right to not give you a certificate of completion at the end of the course, pending a conversation, right? But again, it's very rare. We're not going to do that unless we clearly think there's a serious reason. If you have to miss a class, just send me a note saying, hey, Austin, I got to miss the class, but Scout's honor, I promise to watch the video. And we're good to go. And your attendance is fine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah. And that's why we have the videos, because we're all busy. I'm busy. You're busy. Sometimes life happens. But thank God we have a video recording. So just go back and learn the material that way and you're good to go. Let's see. That's the course overview. Now let me dive into the actual slides for tonight's class and material. And tonight's class, as the first one, is a little heavy on intro stuff. Future classes, there will be a lot less of this. Make this a little bit bigger here. Glancing over, it's like I have a second screen, so I can see your questions as they pop up in Slack, even while I'm talking, and occasionally I'll pause in order to read what you've added. It looks like we've got some good GitHub Enterprise names just got added. Alex and Landon and Andre, perfect. Okay, so introduction to Python, that's the topic of tonight's class. Here's an agenda, basically of what I'd like to talk about. I've gotten into this a little bit. I've done several of these points already. So we're going to move on now to Google Drive and Colab. And then the real heart of tonight's class is going to be what's called these 2 notebooks. And every class will have notebooks. There's a real code. We'll be running it together. So I'm trying to get there as quickly as I can. Let me say a word about expectations, by the way. This class is fast. There's a lot of material, and I like to end on time. So as a result, I'm not going to take a whole lot of breaks. If you need to step away for a minute and get a glass of water or whatever, that's perfectly fine. But I need to keep moving. So unless it's really urgent, I'm not going to take a break. And I hope everybody is okay with that. I hope you understand. Okay, so just as a high level introduction, right? Python programming, why are you here? The future is bright. It is taking over the world. Python is the Chinese, the Mandarin Chinese, or the English language of the technology world. If you know this, many, many doors will open for you. If you don't, you'll always be a little bit behind the curve. Are there other languages? Yes, absolutely. The other really big language, I'm actually going to pop this into Slack, sort of like in English and Mandarin, there are 2 big tech languages. Do you know the other big tech programming language other than Python? Curious to see kind of what your guesses would be. Yes, exactly. JavaScript specifically. Java and JavaScript are not going to be the same. Well, sure, HTML, yep. HTML is definitely a big one, but JavaScript is and Python are kind of the two major ones. And then CSS, HTML, absolutely, for building web pages, spot on. And there's a bit of a divide in terms of software development versus data science. Used to be Python was more data science and JavaScript was more software development, but that's evolved a lot. You can use Python for a lot of web dev. I certainly do it at my company. And definitely the stuff that you learn here is transferable. So once you pick up one programming language, the rest are going to come pretty easily. When you finish this course, the number one thing you want to have is fluency in Python. And we'll talk about this both for development of apps, web apps, and also for data analytics, right? We're also going to introduce you to a wide range of other tools other than the language itself, right? So just as when you go to a restaurant, right, at the very end, they bring you the food, but there's a lot of other stuff that happens to be going on in the kitchen that you never see. That's also the life of a Python developer. In addition to good code, there's going to be a lot of other tools that we use, Terminal, Bash, Heroku, GitHub, and we're going to introduce you to a lot of those and try and make it as similar as possible to the mainstream tools that are used by actual developers on the job, such as at a company like mine. You will have a professional portfolio of 10 homework projects that are shareable, that you can post on LinkedIn, that you can show to employers in order to showcase that you know what you're doing with Python. And then most importantly of all, you'll have a final capstone project that's supposed to be an important element of your portfolio. What you will not have when you finish, right? What will you not have? An absolute knowledge of everything related to the programming language, right? This is a part-time 10-week class. It's going to be a bit introductory. And if nothing else, it's going to whet your appetite for more to come. In my own experience, I did the part-time data science class with General Assembly, and then that allowed me to transition to a full-time immersive program where for 3 months, basically 8 to 10 hours a day, I was hitting the keyboard with GA. And just bear in mind that there's not everything in this class, but we will try and give you a good foundation. Likewise, I don't have the answer to everything, but I'll try and put you in touch with good materials. What do we expect from you? So attendance, we mentioned that a minute ago. Please don't miss more than 3 classes. if you miss more than 3, then as I said before, GA reserves the right to withhold the certificate of completion, barring a conversation with you and some, just knowledge that you've seen those videos and that you've kept up with the material. We ask that you complete 10 assignments, or we recommend that you complete 10 assignments, but you're only required to complete 8 of them for course completion. You do need to finish some type of capstone. And again, there's a floor and there's a very high ceiling in terms of what the expectations are around that. Be present, contribute, work hard, ask questions. Ask questions. I love that. Interrupt. If you have a question, maybe somebody else does too. And in fact, this is a good moment for me to stop. Glancing at Slack. Any questions?
Hey, Austin, it's Journey.
Hi, Journey.
I've just checked my Google Drive and I don't see the material. Have you added my Gmail in your link?
So I will tell you what I did. I'm so glad you brought that up because probably you're not the only person who's dealing with that. There are 2 resources. One is Google and the other is GitHub Enterprise. And I haven't introduced GitHub yet. With Google Drive, I tried to set it so that anybody with a Google account can access the materials. So let me ask you this, Journey. When you click on this link, what do you see? Does it work for you?
Give me a second. I haven't tried the link yet.
Sure.
Oh, okay. I saw it.
Yeah, does that work for you?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
I
actually
was just
set it-
checking my Google
yeah.
Drive. I thought it would be automatically added in there.
Yeah, no, I
Okay,
didn't.
thank
What I
you.
did not, yeah, the second one is a little more complicated though. GitHub Enterprise, I need usernames. So you can see how Alex gave me his username. I need everybody to do that if they haven't done so already. I've added about half of you. So in a minute, I'll try and add the rest of you when I take a little break. Shantae asks, what's the best way to retain material? Do you mean like to remember it or to hold on to the stuff we've shared? Both. That's a good question. But let me go with the easy one. How do I actually hold on to the materials that my instructor has shared with me? I would recommend that for anything that I share with you in Google Drive, you make a copy of it. And I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that right now. So right here in lesson 1, so I'm opening up the lesson 1 folder. If you go to all of these and you select all 4 of them, and then you right click, and hopefully you can see what I see. When I right click, a little dialog box opens. Hopefully you can see that. And then you choose make a copy. It will save all 4 of these to your Google Drive. And then you'll want to go to your drive, mine looks like this, and you'll want to create a folder for our class where you organize your lessons as you see fit. In Google Drive, you can copy documents, but you cannot copy folders, right? So for example, if you go to lesson 1 and you go to make a copy, there is no option for that. But on individual documents, you make a copy and then you can have the materials. So that's a good way to hold on to that stuff. As for the materials in GitHub Enterprise, I'll talk about that in a little bit more, but once I've shared the link, it should pretty much live forever. I certainly have links from when I took the class 4 years ago. Does that answer the question a little bit for the first half, Shantae? And then the second half of your question is, now how do I remember this? And you can probably guess, but the answer is practice it, right? So you have to write a lot of code in this class. And the more you write it, the more you'll memorize it. We'll try and give you exercises. We'll try and build little by little. But the bottom line is, for every hour that you spend in class, you've got to spend at least 30 minutes at home practicing that stuff on your own time. Otherwise, it just won't sink in. Okay? Other questions? Do the 10 GitHub projects include the capstone project? No, they don't. It's 10 homeworks plus a capstone for a grand total of 11. Will the capstone be an additional GitHub project? Yes, it will. Pretty much we'll be using GitHub almost for everything soon. Other questions? Okay. Thanks, Jocelyn. Back to the slides. Here's our class schedule. I showed this a minute ago. I think it's pretty obvious. The topics speak for themselves. I will say it moves quick, so try to keep up. Here's a slide showing icons for some of the tools that we're going to use in this course. There's a lot of them and it can get a little bit confusing, but I think that if we go little by little and with a bit of repetition, soon these tools will start to sink in. I will say that the reason we're throwing a lot at you is because that's what it's like to be a Python developer. In my day job, I use this stuff constantly day in and day out until it's just second nature for me. And I want to expose you to the same tools. It's not just the language. In my experience, and I've taught at a couple of other places, there are some boot camps that try and make it really easy for you by only giving you Python in an interpreter and kind of none of the scaffolding around it. But I think that even though there's a bit of a learning curve at the beginning, in the long run, you'll be grateful that we forced you to use all of these different tools because it gives you the foundation you need as a developer. That being said, I did have a question that came up in Slack that I wanted to fall back on because it was a good question. It was related to tools. It was from let me see if I can spot where it was. Here it is. Yes. You are Angus. Angus, I love your handle, by the way. That's really funny. Angus had a great question. You mentioned, I've been attempting to install using Homebrew on my MacBook Pro. I'm hitting some roadblocks. Number one, big kudos, Angus, that you're using Homebrew because a lot of people don't start there, and that is definitely the right way to do it. But the second follow-up question is, installing Python is a quagmire in a class in as much as everybody has a different computer. Some people have Macs, some people have Windows, some people have older or newer machines. Some people use Anaconda, some people don't. We're going to get there. I think I'm going to do that in week 3. But in order to keep it simple, we're actually not installing anything on your laptop today or Wednesday. We're going to do everything in the cloud using materials that I've set up so that no installation is necessary. And that's kind of an end run around the complexity of all of these tools. Angus, does that work for you? It does. Beautiful. Okay, we've talked about Slack. We've talked a little bit about Google Drive, but Google Drive has 2 parts. I think most of us are actually pretty familiar with this. I don't know about you, but I've been using Google Drive for years. I use it for my personal stuff. You know, it's a great replacement for Microsoft Office, and it's free. But many people don't know that Google Drive has a deep, dark, hidden secret. You can get access to really powerful computing resources on Google Drive completely for free using a tool known as Google Colab, which is designed specifically for running Python and JavaScript code. And that is what we'll be using in the second half of tonight's class. Just a quick introduction to it right now. If you are in Google Drive, in the top left corner, yes, Bob Douglas, yes, Colab and Jupyter Notebooks are one and the same. So you'll notice on my slide here, I've got a symbol here for Jupyter. Let's do a little bit of annotation. So we've got a line. Jupyter Notebooks and Colab, these 2 things go hand in hand. Basically, a Colab notebook is a Jupyter notebook that happens to be running in Google Drive. Or to say that differently, Colab is the Google flavor of Jupyter. Make sense? Great question. So let's do a quick demonstration of Colab right now. If you're in Google Drive, in the top left and you click on New, you'll see several options here: Docs, Sheets, Slides, Forms. And then if you're like me, you never really looked at the More options. But under More, you should see an opportunity for something called Google Collaboratory. If you click on that, it'll open up, create in a share folder, same people, blah, blah, blah. Yep. So let's go ahead and do that. And after it fires up, you should see something that looks a bit like this. It has some options over here on the left. It has code and text here in the middle. It has some sharing options over on the right. And let's try this right now. Let's go ahead and call this my first notebook. And then down here, we've got options for code and text. So let's try a little bit of code. Let's try print, parentheses, quote mark, hello world. And you'll see there's a little arrow just to the left of that. If you click on the arrow, it takes a second and Google Colab will run your code. And I see some questions coming in. I'll respond to that in just a second. Let me just give it a little bit more demonstration, and then I'll help troubleshooting. If I do a second code cell and I say X is equal to 5 and Y is equal to 6, and then I say print X and I run this cell, of course I get a 5. And one more cell with code, let's do X plus Y is 11. And then for text, I add a text cell. This is my message to you. And I hit enter. I can add some more lines to it. And when I pop out of it, the message remains. So that's your first taste of what a Google Colab notebook could look like. If you don't immediately see an option for that, so if you click on new and then more, and then come down here, this could be one of many things. So it looks like RIM has this question. Let me jump back over to Slack. Okay, so it looks like RIM is having this problem, and it looks like Jocelyn also. So let me ask this. How many of you poll? Thumbs up. Yes, I have access to Colab in more, or thumbs down. No, I don't. All right, so go ahead and respond to my poll, and let's see how many people actually immediately saw that or did not see it. Thumbs down and thumbs up. Okay, so some do, but many do not. This is useful. Are you using Chrome? I would start with that. Chrome is definitely a good browser to be using with Google, but it's probably not that. Let's try a different approach. A couple of replies here. Yes, you are. Okay, good. And didn't have it, but got it just now. It took about 5 seconds. That's helpful to know. Could be that for the first time, it needs a little bit of troubleshooting. You may need to install and click through a few more times. What I was going to suggest was this. I've actually already prepared some notebooks for you. So all 4 of these that are in blue, these are in fact Jupyter notebooks. So let's try this a different way. If you weren't able to create my first notebook, why don't you go ahead and click on one of the notebooks that I shared with you and see if that opens up. So let's try this guy right here, and you'll see it opens up in Colab. You may need to make a copy of it first. I'm not sure about this, if you want to make a copy first and then open from there, but then you should see all of the pre-populated text that I've given you. So let me respond with this. Can you open the notebook that I provided in Google? Thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay, so RIM is saying no, that's not working for me. Thanks, Bob. Okay, and again, Alex and Bob, this is not a call out, but just a reminder, if you can actually respond in the icons rather than in a separate line, it'll help the class keep track a little bit easier of where we're at. And Rim, it only opens with text editor. So Rim, it sounds like you've got some particular problems that might need some additional troubleshooting one-on-one. I may give the class a starting assignment in a minute and then work one-on-one with students during that time. But Matthew has done a great screenshot. Thanks, Matthew. You are my right-hand man. And you have a Connect More app. So this is exactly what I see in mine. If we're not seeing that, then I'll have to do some one-on-one troubleshooting with folks. And by the way, I do only see a few responses here, so I'd like to pause for a minute. I want to ask everybody, respond to this poll. I need to know, are you able to open the notebook that I provided or not? And I'll actually add a link to that now under share, just to make sure that you got that. Anyone to copy link? And I'll drop it here. Can you open the notebook that I provided? And here's a link to that. Let's edit it. Okay, so I've got 12 people responding out of 19 in the class. There are still 7 that haven't responded yet. So thumbs down was Rim and Andre, and Journey. Those 3 have not been able to do it. And everybody else is a yes. So Andre, Rim, and Journey.
Hey,
Rim
Austin.
just switched. Yes, go ahead.
Hey, so what I'm noticing is I have multiple Google accounts. So I
Yes.
have one for this class specifically.
Yes.
And what's happening is it's trying to ask me to install it in my primary account, which I don't want to.
Sure.
And then when I try to
You know what's a great workaround for that is just use a different browser. I have that same problem with work, and I use 3 different browsers: Chrome, Firefox, and Brave, and then your accounts won't talk to each other. Would that help?
Yeah, let me do that. Thanks.
Sure. Okay. Andre, Journey, Ling, Shantae, and Landon are all saying that they are not able to open this link. Is that correct? Okay, well, I'll tell you what, a little bit later on, Andre, Journey, Shantae, and Landon, the 4 of you, I'll make sure that I have some one-on-one time with the 4 of you in order to troubleshoot that specific problem. Just hold tight for right now. Just watch what we're doing, and I promise that we'll make it work for you soon, okay? Even if it has to be immediately after class. Oh, this is interesting. Connect with more apps. That might be helpful. So, Stephen, thank you for that suggestion. I never had to do that, but perhaps that's been important for others. That sounds perfect. All right, so I will come back to that. But for right now, it sounds like most people were able to initiate a first notebook and put in some simple code similar to what I shared here. And most people were able to at least open the prepared notebook that we'll fill out in a minute. So that was an introduction to Slack. That was an introduction to Colab. The next one is an intro to GitHub and GitHub Enterprise. This is another tool that we'll be using a lot in the class. This overlaps a little bit with Google Drive in as much as you'll see some of the same material in both places. And that's, by design. The reason for that is sometimes Google is going to be a better tool for accessing the material, and sometimes GitHub will be a good tool for accessing it in a different way. GitHub is really useful for storing and collaborating on code. Most programmers, myself included, use it constantly. It's really how most big companies maintain their code base. It's also useful for deploying static web pages and Python applications, and we'll be doing that in a little bit. There is an important distinction, however, and I know that a couple of you already are familiar with this. There are 2 flavors of GitHub. There's GitHub Public, which is a white cat in a black circle, and there's GitHub Enterprise, which is a black cat in a white circle. And the difference basically is public, obviously, is when you want to share it with the whole world, and enterprise is when you want to keep it private. Most companies, including General Assembly, use GitHub Enterprise for their code base. And the reason why is because they don't want everybody and their uncle having access to their Python code. Enterprise has a lot of firewalls, keeps proprietary information secret, keeps other people from robbing your code. So obviously there's different situations for both. There's actually no a particular reason why we can't use both, and you'll see that I'll frequently pop back and forth between the two. But we're mostly going to default to GitHub Enterprise because we are a for-profit school and we want to keep our the code that we worked long and hard to write. We kind of want to keep it just for our students as much as we can. So that's why we'll be using GitHub Enterprise for most of this class. The link for GitHub Enterprise that I shared out earlier is here. And you should see two different things. This is GitHub Enterprise. And let's see, with a thumbs up, can you access this? Can you access GitHub Enterprise? Okay, you should see at least something, but for many of you, it will be a little bit blank. I need to go through, and for each one of you that added your name, I need to add you to the organization. Once you're inside, this is what you'll see. You'll notice that in terms of people, we've got 16 people, including myself, which means that there are still about 4 or 5 of you that I need to add to the group. And I've added all of your usernames here. And once you're inside the fold, you'll see 2 objects which are known as repositories, or repos for short. This is the repo for tonight's class, and it's got kind of an introductory statement, plus several folders: docs, lecture, and practice. The contents of the lecture folder are exactly the same as the contents of the Google Drive folder. So I'm going to go ahead and put these side by side. And you can see that we've got slides, we've got notebook 1 with and without answers, and then we've got notebook 2. So all of those materials are going to be the same. But in addition to that, GitHub has some additional resources. It has practice, which includes challenges and also solutions. And the idea here is that there are 5 notebooks with a series of coding challenges that you can work through on your own, plus the answers to them. So if you get stumped or you're not sure how to do something, you can find the answers here. The idea is that this is for independent practice outside of class, or if you're one of those students who wants to go faster than what I, the instructor, can provide, this material is there for you for self-learning. I won't always use it during class. I actually won't use it a lot. Mostly I'll stick to what's in lecture. And the docs folder, well, we're going to get to that in the last 30 minutes. So just hold tight on that one. But for right now, let's go ahead and pivot over to Notebook 1. This is the next big section. And there are some slides here that work through Notebook 1. I'm going to give a high-level introduction to Notebook 1, and then I'm going to invite you to work through it quietly on your own while I troubleshoot the students who don't have full access to the materials yet. So let's do a little 5, maybe 7-minute introduction, and then I'm going to turn you loose for about 15 minutes of quiet working time. Sound good? How's the pacing? No, you can't give me a thumbs up. You got to follow the clan. Who is that? Oliver. Oliver's charting his own course. You're fine with the thumbs up, man. It's all good. Okay. Couple of folks feeling like we're going a little fast. Okay, good stuff. All right, so here comes the quick introduction, and then the quiet work time follows. And let's see if I can do this side by side, because the slides actually correspond to what's in the code. And I want to go to view, and I want to go to grid view, and that's what I want. Slide you over to the side. Zoom in a little bit. Okay, it's not perfect, but it'll have to do. Okay, so here in Notebook 1, you'll see a series of questions. There's a cell here, our first Jupyter cell. Introduce yourself, a bunch of questions regarding operators and operating variables, Mad Libs, etc. So all of these are questions. But you'll see that we also have the answers to all of these in the solutions notebook. So in addition to questions, we also have a solutions notebook that has the finished code for each one of the prompts. So I'm going to do a couple of these right now, and then I'm going to let you follow the rest of it on your own and see if you can do it flying solo. So the very first Jupyter cell corresponds to our first Jupyter cell. We'll be using interactive Python notebooks called Jupyter Notebooks. Let's go ahead and open that up. And we'll start with Python's founding principles, known as the Zen of Python. So at the bottom of this cell, and pardon me, I'm just opening this up on a second computer so that I have it also at my fingertips. Most Python scripts begin with the word import. Import allows you to access some additional files that aren't there in base Python. If we import this and we click on the cell here, the little arrow, and we run it, it takes a moment for it to kind of buzz its way through. And then it gives us this little poem about the Zen of Python, kind of a philosophy behind what good code writing should look like. For the introduce yourself cell, there's going to be a section here on variables that I'll talk through in a minute. But for introducing yourself, it's going to invite you to come up with a few variables. You'll come up with a greeting. You'll come up with a name. You'll come up with a mood. And then you'll follow it up with a print statement where you'll combine all of those variables and try and print them out. So I'm going to invite you to work right now, those of you who have access to the folder, on each of these prompts and simply copy the code from the solved notebook, or you can change it up and obviously have it say something different from what it currently does. Change the numbers, but try and imitate the code and then one by one run it in these cells that are currently blank. And while you're doing that, I'll be working with the folks who are having some difficulties. Make sense? Everybody understand what they need to do here? Take 15 minutes to try this notebook on your own. All right, go for it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I will keep talking, but just go ahead and feel free to tune me out here. For the folks who are having trouble with Colab, let me go back to that. No, I don't. That was, can you open it? It looks like this is Andre, Journey, Shante. Let me just make a note of this here on a piece of paper. Andre, Journey, Shante, Landon, and Opata. All right, so for the 5 of you guys, you're the 5 that I'm speaking with right now. I'm focused on you. Looks like I'm going to ask one of you to share your screen. Let me go one by one. Andre, can you share your screen so I can see what you're looking at? Andre, are you with me? Feel free to unmute as well so I can hear you. Nice. Okay, so Andre, when you click, so right now you're in the course overview, right? Go up to one of the other links to the notebook. I want to see what happens when you click on one of the other notebook links. You can also get it from Slack if you need to.
Give me 1 second. Hold on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, take your time. There we go. Okay.
So it just gives me like the text.
Okay, and it looks like you're on a Windows machine, is that right?
Yes, sir. HP.
Okay, and the browser that you're using is what?
Edge.
Edge. It would not surprise me if this is an Edge problem. For the other four, Journey, Shantae, Landon, and Opata, are you experiencing anything similar to Andre?
I was, but what I did was I copied the files that you gave us, and
Yes.
then I tried to open Google Colab, but it wouldn't. But at the bottom, it allows you to install other apps. So I
Yes.
searched it up and installed it, and then I tried to open it again, and it worked.
Oh, so you're good to go now, Shantae?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Oh, okay, great. I'm so glad to hear that. All right, Journey, Landon, and Opata, are you experiencing the same thing as Andre?
Yes, the same exact thing, just the text that's coming up.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
And are you also using Edge or are you using a different browser?
I'm using Google Chrome.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. I'm also using Google Chrome.
All right. So let's go back. I'm going to walk Andre through it and see if we can solve it this way. Andre, go back a second. So let's try making a copy of the notebook. Have you already copied it, or is this the one that I shared with you?
No, I haven't copied it. This is the one you shared with me.
Okay. So what we're looking at is your copy, not my copy, correct?
This is your copy. I'm just in the drive right now.
Okay. Can you right click on the notebook? No, just right. Don't download. Go ahead and right click on it.
Sorry. Nothing happens.
Nothing happens when you right click on it. It looks. I know what it is. Do you have a Google account, Andre?
I do, but I'm not signed into it. Do I need to sign into it?
That's exactly what the problem is. Yeah, definitely. Journey, Landon, and Opata. Do the three of you have a Google account?
Yes, like a Gmail account?
Yeah, like a Gmail account, exactly.
Yes, I do.
So that could be a big part of it. Andre, I'm going to let you troubleshoot that. Let me ask you to
Yep.
stop sharing your screen. And let me switch over to Landon. Landon, can you share your screen for a minute?
I'm all good. I got it resolved. Thank you.
You got it resolved. Okay. Journey and Opata, try signing into your Google account and see if that solves it.
Okay, I got mine up as well. Just tried to download the Google Colab. Yep, so I'm good to go.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
All right. Then I think that might have solved it. Andre, let me know if that works for you.
Sounds good. Trying to send it right.
So do I right click it? I guess I'm having a little bit of issues still.
Opata, share your screen, please.
Sure. So share.
At the bottom of the window, there's a green
Okay.
button.
Do you see my screen?
Yes, I sure do. I can definitely see it.
Okay.
Okay, so I
click-
see. Yeah, I see the kind of all the text. Go ahead and go back to where we can see your Google Drive. So just use your browser to go back.
Okay. Whoops. Now let me go back.
I'd like to see your Google Drive.
Okay. Let me just go back to the drive.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
So, okay, so it looks like when you click on new at the top left, what happens? More, no collab. Okay. Is this a personal account or is this a business account?
personal.
Like, personal. And you're working in Chrome and you made a copy of Colab. At the bottom where it says connect more apps, did you try that yet?
More apps.
Search for Colab.
Is it
Yeah, there, Collaborator. That's the one. Click on that. Yeah,
Okay.
connect this. I'll bet this will solve it. And install.
Gotcha.
All right, let's see if that works, okay?
Okay.
All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and go mute for a second. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and make sure everybody has access to GitHub Enterprise. Thanks. You can stop sharing your screen now.
Okay. Let me do that. Oops. Oh, why can't I stop? Stop share. Oops. Okay,
There we
thank you.
go. Great. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and hopefully everybody can hear you. And I hope you had a chance to take a little taste of that first notebook. Just really briefly, I believe that everybody except for Duncan. Duncan, do I have your GitHub Enterprise handle? I may have missed it here in Slack.
No worries. It's Angus Austin. I'll post that right now for you.
Sure, and I'll just make sure that I've added you, and then you should be the last one. I'll actually show you what I'm doing here. So I'm going to go to people, and I'll add a member. Is it just Angus? Angus McCann?
Here, I'll post it in the
Sure,
chat.
sure, sure.
Sorry. Just posted it in Zoom.
Angus, Dunk is your last name. I'm sorry. You
Yep.
posted it in Zoom. Do me a favor. I don't actually get notifications when you put things in Zoom.
Okay,
If you can put it here in Slack, it's actually a little easier for me to see.
sure.
Austin, I'm still having issues with the collab app.
Okay. Let me just finish here with Duncan. No, sorry, Duncan's the last name. Angus, sorry, Angus. Angus Duncan, there we go. Angus, I have now added you.
Okay.
Let me know if you can now see the material.
Let's see. Yes, I'm in. Thank you.
Sure thing. Okay, and then someone else was saying they were still having some trouble. Can you tell me your name, please?
Yes, Austin, it's Andre.
Andre. Hi, Andre. Okay, go ahead and share your screen for me. Let's see what you got going. Okay, so we're signed into your account.
Yep.
Looks like you've got a Colab notebook there on the far right. That looks good. Go ahead and open that up for me. Double click it. Okay.
Oh, that's weird. So never mind, because I clicked on it before, but it said it wasn't accessible. Never mind.
Yeah, sometimes it takes like a minute or two to boot up.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
Problem solved. So now I'm sharing my screen and I'm going to get back into the notebook and got the slides here on the left. And we've got the notebook here on the right. So we have a section here to talk about variables and data types. And a variable is basically any object that exists in Python. Variables can be x, as we did before, x equals 5, or x is equal to the name Austin, or x is equal to the word true. All of those can be variables. And of course, I can give them different names, x, y, and z, for example. And when I run this cell, now Python remembers those three variables. And if I add a new cell and I call them back and I run it here, now it remembers that x was equal to 5. It remembers that y was equal to my name. And it remembers that z was equal to the word true. So variables are our primary building block in Python. Everything else is built around the concept of a variable for larger data structures. But there are different flavors. Let me go ahead and mute everybody up here. There are different flavors of variables, and those are known as data types. And if you've done any work, say with Microsoft Excel, then you're probably pretty familiar with the idea that different data types exist. Python allows us to easily define them by means of the equals sign. So here we have a variable name, best programming language. The equals sign is for identity purposes. And then the value that is stored in the variable is the word Python in quotes. You'll notice that the variable name is not in quotes, but its value is. So here are some restrictions on what you can name a variable. Jocelyn asks, do the spaces before and after the equal sign matter? They do not. So in fact, I can have, good question, Jocelyn. I can have lots of spaces here, and I can have no spaces whatsoever there. And when I run the cell, it runs just fine. But spaces do matter elsewhere. So for example, Jocelyn, if I put my full name, Austin Michael Lassiter, that has spaces, right? And if I put this here, my first name, that looks pretty good, right? But now if I try to add spaces to the variable name, my space first space name, and I run it, I get an error message telling me that this is invalid syntax. Variable names have to be connected, and they have to be connected, say, by an underscore. So now that looks pretty good. Variables are case sensitive. Yes, they are. So if I define a second variable called my first name, and this is going to be equal to, I don't know, my brother's name is Ben Lassiter, right? And I run these two. That looks pretty good. But if I call print my first name followed by print my capital first, and notice that it's got the autocomplete going for me, and I run this cell. Now it remembers that those are two separate variables. So good question, Eric. Other restrictions on variable names. So the name cannot be just a number. You can't have the variable 2 as a name of a variable, right? And you can't begin a variable with a number. So again, I'm going to say here my first name, and I'm going to put the number 2 in front of it. I'll get an error message on that one. It doesn't like that. But if I put the 2 at the end, my first name 2, that works fine. So you have to be careful when you use numbers in the name of your variable. It cannot be assigned the same name as a default or imported function. So for example, up here, we had a function called import, and you'll notice that it's in purple. That's part of base Python syntax. As a result, I can't then have a new variable called import equal to this message, right? If I run that, once again, it'll give me an error message saying invalid syntax. But if I decide to call it import variable, notice it's no longer purple. That name works. So you see there's a lot of reserved function names, and you can tell simply by the coloring. If nothing else, there's also a list of them that's not hard to find online. And as I mentioned before, it can't contain spaces. Some additional best practices for variables. They should be in lowercase. They don't have to be. So I gave you an example here of uppercase, but we actually, by best practice, reserve uppercase typing for something called a class object, which we'll see much later in the course. So ideally, you will always use lowercase for your variables, but you're not forced to do so. It should be indicative of the concept it represents, makes it easy to remember, and you can use that underscore. You can't use hyphens. So notice if I replace this as my dash first dash name, and I run it, once again, can't assign this to an operator. So it doesn't like dashes, but it does like underscores. Primitive data types. Let me go ahead and delete this cell. And this one as well. And by the way, if you want to type along with some of this, you're certainly welcome to do so. Try it out on your own. So there are 4 types. Let's call this X. Maybe I'm going to run out of names if I do that. Let's do A. I need to turn off autocomplete. It's actually kind of a nuisance. A, B, C, and D. So I've got 4 variables. The first one is going to be a string. This is a message, right? Or my planet Earth. The second is going to be any whole number without decimal points. So 11. Third is a float. So 49.99. And the last one is going to be what's known as a Boolean, named after a philosopher whose last name was Boole, who was really into kind of the distinction between true and false, I guess. This time we'll make it equal to false. So I'm going to run this cell. And now if I add an additional cell, I can actually find out what those data types were. So I can call type A. A is a string variable, just as we indicated over here on the left. Or I can call type B. That's an integer, int. Type C. And, whoops, wrong spot. Type D. is a bool, short for Boolean. So you see how the different data types, it's actually embedded, and Python knows. You don't have to tell it. It just automatically knows that something in quotes is going to be a string. Something, a number without decimals, will be an integer. But notice the following. Suppose I take 49.99 and I put it into quotes and I rerun this cell. Now when I go down here to type C, it's no longer a float. It's now a string because I put it in quotes. Likewise, the word false, put it in quotes, run it. Type D has now become string. So anytime you put something into quotes, then you've converted it into what's known as an alphanumeric string. And there's also no difference between one quote or two quotes. So notice that this is in single quotes, this is in double quotes, but Python doesn't care. It doesn't distinguish between the two sets of apostrophes. Pausing there, questions about data types? Try and do the knowledge check on your own. Try and match the values. Jocelyn wants to know, what shortcut am I using? Great question. Here, I'm going to do it in a new cell, actually. This is a really long message, and I want to put it into quotes, right? So I could go all the way to the beginning and put a quote mark here, and then go all the way to the end and put a quote mark there, right? But there's a bit of a shortcut. Instead, I just select the whole thing, and you can't see my hands right now, but I'm taking my right hand and I'm simply pressing the apostrophe key one time, and it puts the whole thing into quotes. In addition, another nice shortcut is, instead of pressing the arrow button, you can press on a MacBook Shift Return, which I assume on a Windows would be Shift Enter, and it will run the cell for you. Jocelyn, give me a thumbs up if that works for you. Or just unmute and tell me. Other questions?
That works. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so now we get into the section where it says introduce yourself. And this is supposed to be, oh, but I should probably have done this exercise. But I think you get the idea, right? Hello world is a string, 6 is an integer, 7.2 is a float, and true is a Boolean. So here's a solo exercise about introduce yourself. And here's the suggested answers: greeting, name, and print. And what you'll notice is that the print statement uses the plus sign in order to string together. I used string in order to join together strings and string variables into a sentence. So in this case, we have this silly sentence about human, right? But if we replaced this with a number, so now this is a 23, for example, and this is now a Boolean, true, what happens now? Then we get an unsupported operand type, right? So it doesn't like that very much. You need these variables to be in quotes in order to be able to join them into a string. Jumping back over to Slack, did the introduce exercise go okay? Yeah, you can do that with white space, yes. Thumbs up if that worked okay for you. Thumbs down if you had a problem with it. Great. Moving forward, operators and updating variables. Manipulating variables. What do you do with these? We've already seen that the assignment operator is an equal sign. We've seen that in action, but there are others as well. Math seems pretty simple: plus, minus, the star for multiplication, and the slash for dividing. All of that works pretty obviously with math. The modulus is for the remainder after division, and 2 stars is for an exponent, like raising it to the power of 10. And I will say, of all of these, I think they're pretty straightforward, with the exception of the famous modulus, which isn't even in here. I'm going to be honest, this never gets used, modulus or modulo. gives the remainder. What it's really good for is checking whether something is true. So an even number, such as, I don't know, 46 modulo 2, and I run this, the remainder is going to be 0. But modulo 3, the remainder is 1. So it's really kind of nice for checking whether a number is odd or even. But outside of a kind of intro to Python class, nobody really ever uses it. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Rim asks, is there a time when we need to use double quotes versus single? Yes, actually, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up. Rim asks, double quotes versus single. If you want to have quotes inside of quotes. So for example, let's do a print statement. Print, then he said to me, why don't you run? So when I run this, notice that the quotes turned out okay. Now there's a bit of a problem here. Of course, this is an apostrophe and I want to put an additional quote mark in there, but I can't because I've already done it twice. So that's not the best example, but let's get rid of these. Then he said to me, let's just get rid of the outer quotes. Why don't you run? And now I can add an apostrophe in here, and that actually works. So you can have 2 sets of embedded quotes. You can't have 3. Rim, does that answer your question? Yes, great. Okay, moving forward, concatenating strings, as we saw earlier, concatenation is a fancy word for joining, right? So you have a bunch of strings down here, and you put it together into a Mad Lib. So you think of a bunch of adjectives and you join them together. This gets at the use of formatting. So this is a rather long example. Let me do a simpler example right below it. Print hello works pretty well, right? And then let's actually add a name to that. My name is equal to, quote, Austin. And I want to do print plus my name. And of course, you've already had some sense of how that works, right? But there's a different way to get at this, which is what the cell above is using, which is what's known as F string. So print, you put an F outside the string, remove this, and then add it inside using curly brackets as follows. My name, and when I run this, it comes out the same. So there's actually 2 different ways of getting at the same result. You can join the strings together, or you can put the F for formatting and then drop the variable inside of curly brackets. And this demonstrates something that happens very frequently with Python, which is that there's many different ways of doing this same thing. And different situations will call for kind of different ways of doing it. Generally speaking, when you have many, many variables to concatenate, this is a bit more elegant than having to add lots of plus signs. And this slide talks about F strings, which I just discussed a minute ago. So here it is also on a slide. Notice the F, and then the variable name in curly brackets, and then the other variable name also in curly brackets. So what about updating variables? We want to be able to change the value of a variable. No, Jocelyn, there's no limit. So right now, my variable is set to be equal to the word hello. And I'm going to go ahead and clear some of this out. Notice I'm restarting my runtime in order to clear out all the previous answers. After a moment, it should all kind of disappear. So right now, my variable is equal to hello. And when I run this, I get hello beneath that. Down here, I want to update my number from 5 to add 5 to it. So the first time, I'm going to go ahead and comment this out. My number is equal to 5. Now when I run it again, now it's equal to 10 because the plus equal means take whatever the previous value of my number was and add 5 to it. And if I add an additional cell below this and I run it yet again, now it's 15. And I could go on, an infinite number of cells. And each time it goes up by 5 because plus equal to adds that value to whatever the prior number was. But if I go back to this cell and I run this again, now it goes back to being 10 or even right back down to 5 because I've reset the value of the variable by using that equal sign. So this is for updating variables. Basically, every time you run that equal sign, you update the value of the variable, you reassign it. So they can shift on the fly. And throughout this, you'll see the pound sign at the beginning. That indicates a comment. It's, if the pound sign is at the beginning, then Python knows not to run that. Alan says your print sample for F. I'm not sure if I follow your question here. Let me read this. Had parentheses. The sample didn't. I suppose it doesn't matter. I may have missed that.
Yeah, on page 31 on the sheet, you had it didn't have the parentheses around the message. I don't know if you had it on your sample that you were doing.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So the word print doesn't appear here. Is that what you're referring to?
Oh yeah, you know what, never mind. Yeah, you weren't printing. Got it.
Yeah. Okay, but no, the parentheses are very important, and I tried to demonstrate that right here. Missing parentheses in call to print. If you want to print something, you've got to select it and use that shortcut to put it into parentheses. But that does demonstrate one thing that's useful, so I'm glad you brought that up, Alan. Suppose we say right now my variable, and I run this, and it prints that. But I also put below it, I put my number. So now I've got two variables back to back. It only shows the number. And if I put a third one down here, what was a variable I used before? My name, right? Oh, wait, it's not defined. Well, anyway, you get the idea, right? What I'm trying to demonstrate here is that the output only shows the last line of code in the cell, even though everything else was run. So if I want them both to run, I need to put one of them into a print statement, and now they'll both come out.
Got
By
it. Thank you.
default, it only displays what happens at the very bottom of the cell, even though it ran everything else. Comments, operators and updating variables, birthday calculator trick. Yeah, I think we did all that. Printing, there's a question we had just now about the print function. Notice that print doesn't do anything, it just displays it, right? Whereas this doesn't display anything, but it does something. That is actually important to know. If I set my num equal to 10, there is no output, but something did happen. The variable was assigned, so there won't always be something to show. We did the Mad Libs, we changed the data types. Okay, and then there are actually a ton of different ways to print. This again just demonstrates that there's multiple ways of achieving the same result in Python. Okay, and at this point, I'd like to move to the second notebook, generating HTML and deploying a static web page. Okay, so for this, I'm going to shift over to our other tool, which is GitHub Enterprise. So try and stay with me here. Don't get lost as I switch from one to the other. Python intro, I'm in GitHub. And notice that everything that we just did is located here. But there is a lot of practice. And I'm going to invite you to try this out on your own. So try and make maybe a new Colab notebook. You'll do this after class. You're not going to do this right now, but I just want to demonstrate it right now. So let's go to Google Drive, lesson 1, and I'm going to create a new Colab notebook. And I'm going to create and share. And I'm going to give it a name, and it's going to be, I don't know, we'll call this O1 practice, for example. And then there's 5 different practice notebooks you can go with that practice what we talked about in today's class. So you open up Numbers, for example, and notice that there's solutions, and then there's also challenges. Just try working through it and copying some of the code that's in here. Let's see if we get something a little more complicated. So I'm going to copy this cell, can use parentheses for specific orders. I copy it, I paste it into here, I run it, and it takes its time, 156. That works pretty smoothly. If you want to challenge yourself, try going to the answers, sorry, the challenges without the solutions. So now I'm in Numbers, and then here's a question, and it's going to say, can I give an example of powers? And I'll go over here to Colab, and I'll add a new cell. And okay, powers, how did I do that? Was it like this? Let's see, 4 to the second power. Maybe it was 4 to the second. I'm going to do it deliberately wrong. I think that's how I did it. Nope, that's invalid syntax. Oh yes, I remember. It's star star 16. And then you can also do roots this way for star star 0.5 square root. And then call an object called A and assign the number 5 to it. How would I do that? I would do A is equal to 5, and then I would print it down below. So try challenging yourself using the challenge statements, and then go back over to the solutions in order to check your answers. But moving on from there, let's try deploying a static web page. And this is where GitHub really comes into its own. Navigate into the docs folder, and here you'll see some HTML. It's not Python at all. There's an HTML file which has just a really simple layout for a simple static web page. And among other things, it has this iframe here that is hosting a file called scatterplot. Now we can't change any of this. As you can see, this is completely non-changeable. I can't really modify it. But I can go into the settings here in the top right, and here I'm going to actually drop this into Slack to deploy a GitHub repo as a static web page. Go to settings. And then here under settings, you'll scroll down a little bit, and you'll see your site is published at, and I'm actually going to click this and I'm going to open it up. And look at that. I've got that same HTML code that I showed a minute ago is now fully deployed as a web page that I can share here. Here it is. So what I've done is I've taken my code repo and I've actually shared it online as a page that anybody can see, not just members of our repository. And this is super important because once you finish your code, you're often going to want to share your finished results with other people. This is how you would do that. So it's a really useful technique. It sounds like somebody is trying to ping me here in Zoom. Keep in mind that the Zoom chat actually I have much less accessibility to, so I often miss your chat messages here. But let's just go ahead and open it up. And it looks like, okay, nobody's pinging me here, so it must have been someplace else. But give that a try. Give that a try and see if you can actually deploy the repo. Now, in order to do that, I'm sorry, I missed a step. I got ahead of myself there. You won't be able to do that yet. Yes, Matthew's spot on. I missed a step. I apologize. Missed a step. You have to fork the repo first, and then you own it. So right now, I'm the owner of this repo. You're not, so you can't actually go to settings. But in the top right corner, there's a button that says fork. And if you click on that, I'll do it now. There's a little scanner image with a fork in it. And you'll notice now it has my name, Austin Lassiter, is now the owner instead of the Python programming organization. So I have my own version of it, and I can potentially make changes to this version of the code. Go ahead and make your own copy. Go to settings and see if you can deploy it as your own page. Give that a shot. And you'll notice up here in the top left, it has this little Python symbol because we saved it as Python logo. Now we're going to make a simple change here. Let's go ahead and find some other PNG. Let's go to, I don't know, Favicon is a good place to get some, or any place really. What have I got here? I might pull something up from my own drive. Let's do a different version of the Python logo. That's it. Python logo green. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and I'm going to download this. So I'm going to save this image as, and I'm going to give it exactly the same logo, Python logo, same name rather. I'm going to save it as .png. Actually, let's go ahead and find it as a PNG first. I need it to have exactly the same name because I don't want to get stuck with save image, naming problems. Okay, it's going to give me issue no matter what I choose. So let's just see what happens if I go with this. It's probably going to be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as Python logo.png. I'm going to put it here in downloads. Use PNG. I'm going to go ahead and replace it on my laptop. Go to my downloads file. Let's search for Python logo.png. I've got a lot of these. But there's the one I'm looking for. There's the funny looking one, okay? All right, so here's what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to upload this to my repo and replace what I had previously. And I'm doing all of this. The purpose of all of this is to kind of educate you on the process and workflow. I'm going to add a file. I'm going to upload a file. I'm going to go ahead and maybe drop it from that repository that I had open a second ago. And it'll ask me to commit my changes. And it gives me a default message saying add files via upload. I'll just, sure, added a new Python logo file. And I'm going to go ahead and commit those changes. And notice that it's given me a new message here. I've added a new Python logo file. If I go to docs, the file has been replaced. If I go to my static web page and I hit refresh, and I may have to open this up in a new browser or wait for a second because sometimes it's going to be cached. So let's try it in a private window. And it'll load in a second, but what we're getting at is that this icon in the top left will change in a second because we've replaced the photo, the PNG that's lying underneath it. And this is going to be the last step. And I know this is a lot of things, but let's see if we can get all of it to come together. There is a last notebook that I shared with you guys that is going to generate a new file that we can add to our static web page. It's called Generate HTML. So back in Colab, I'm going to go ahead and open this guy up. And this has some Python code to generate some HTML images. And Matthew is saying, I must have missed something. I can't replicate that step. My guess, Matthew, the most common thing is I missed it as well. Did you fork the repo? Give me a thumbs up on that. Did you fork the repo? Because you need to have ownership of it before you can display it as a stat. You did do that. And then inside your repo, you went to settings here at the far right, and you scroll down a little bit to where it's had GitHub pages. And you clicked on master branch docs folder. I'm sorry, guys, I may have forgotten to mention this. You need to select the source. It's probably that's the step that I skipped over. Select docs from this dropdown. Master branch / docs folder, because that's where all your web page materials are located. And that should do it for you. I'm guessing, Matthew, that that's the step that was missing. And I think it was on the wrong screen. Okay. But anyway, give that a shot and make sure that you've deployed the docs folder successfully. What we're going to do now is this is the last step, we're going to use Python to update that same static web page. And I'm going to keep it open here so that we can come back to it. Under settings and docs folder. Put this in a new link. It'll start off as a 404. It takes a minute or two for it to warm up. So it won't happen immediately, but it will come up after a minute. We're going to replace the scatter plot with something new. So in this notebook, we've got an initial import statement. You'll remember that previously we had used simply the import this statement, and it gave us that Zen of Python. In the second cell, we're going to try something a little more real world, which is to import a real Python library, the Plotly Graph Objects library. We're going to import it as Go, or Go for short. We'll create two variables, a variable called myLabels and a variable called myValues. And each of these is actually a collection of objects as noted by the brackets, also known as a list. So we've got 4 strings followed by 4 numbers, and these are myLabels and myValues. In the next cell, and I'm not expecting that you would know how to do this, I'm just giving you the code kind of right off the bat. We're going to create an object called myData using a new function we've never seen before called go.bar. And we'll employ those variables, myLabels and myValues. When we run this, it generates a bar chart with numeric values for the 4 meals. And if you want to change those, you simply overwrite the 4 numbers. So let's do 10, 11, 2, and 6, for example. And looks like I forgot to run the previous cell. You have to run all the cells for this to work. And now I've changed the way the bar chart looks. What I'd like to do is I'd like to save this bar chart in my static web page. So I'm going to add a code here called write.html. And I'm going to call this exactly the same name that we used in the repository. So let's go back over here to Python intro, docs folder, scatterplot.html. This is what I'm going to replace. And I'm going to call it scatterplot.html, and I run this. Nope, looks like I need to actually give it a name. Fig is equal to. And now that I've saved the figure as HTML with fig.write, it'll be located over here on the left under my Colab files. I've created a new file called scatterplot.html. I download it. And now it's going to be here in my downloads. I'm going to save that file. Open up Finder or Explorer in a Windows machine. Scatterplot.html. And again, I've done this a bunch of times, so I've got a bunch of them sitting on my laptop. We're actually going to get rid of all of these because I've got too many and I don't actually need all of those. Should be here in my downloads. There it is. Thank you. And then we're going to bring this into our repository as we did a minute ago with the Python image. So once again, I'm going to add a file. I'm going to upload a file. Go over here to my scatterplot. Drag it on over. Once again, I'm going to commit my changes by pressing the green button. Now I've overwritten the scatterplot file. And if I refresh my site page, my first analysis now has the bar chart that I created. And the purpose of all of this, I know that was a lot of steps, is to show you how you can use Python code to update a website on the fly and generate new images that you could then potentially share with a client. So this is just a first step in that direction. There's a lot more to come. But I wanted to make sure that even our very first lesson was not simply stuck on simple lines of code, but was actually being used to produce something that you could share in a shareable way, similar to our upcoming projects. Jumping back over to Slack. Were you able to deploy the static web page? And were you able to generate the HTML chart? No problem if you didn't. This was kind of a more advanced step at the end of class. And the last step, were you able to update the static web page with the new chart? Those are the 3 steps that I'd love for you to see if you can manage in order to wrap things up. Yes, yes, and yes. A couple of people were not. Okay, and again, if you weren't able to, not a problem. It's completely understandable. This is just the first time. But I'm glad that some people were able to have some success. If you were able to, please share your link here so we can see what you did. I want to see the finished links of those who were able to do it. Go ahead and drop it below so we can all admire your good work. Okay, to wrap things up, please practice the practice folder on your own and watch the video recording. Ask questions on Slack about whatever doesn't make sense. Okay, this is not a formal homework assignment. We'll get more into that later because how you submit homework in this class is something that I want to talk about on Wednesday. So no formal homework tonight. But I do ask that you fill out the exit ticket, which is here. Go ahead and give me feedback. I take feedback very seriously, both positive and negative. I want to hear how it's going. But that's a wrap for tonight. I will hang around if you have additional questions and you want to go over some things. I'm still here, but if you need to leave, completely make sensible. is it to be watched before Wednesday? You know, Matthew, whenever you can manage, I think it's good for you to review what we did. I will post it first thing tomorrow morning. Make sense? Okay, well, please stay for questions. Please stay for after class questions. Goodbye and good night. And thanks to all of you, okay? Thanks all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Austin,
Yes.
I have a question. I don't
Go
see
for
where
it.
the commit button.
Yeah, good question. All right, so let's do this. Why don't you share your screen, okay? Okay, great. So let me look at the top left. Can you scroll up a little bit? Okay, so you forked, that's great. And you're in Docs. So you want to add a new file, right? The commit button, Alex, will only appear after you've made a change. So go ahead and upload a file. We want it to have the same name, so scatterplot.html. Go ahead and drag the file into the drag file area. So let me know, Alex, when you've been able to drag that file into the upload area.
Where do you download it?
Oh, you're trying to upload, not download, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to well, just post it. How do I post it?
So you can't post it yet. We have to make a change first.
Oh, okay.
So why don't you go ahead and open up Explorer or wherever your. Oh, wait a minute. You want to download from the Colab notebook. Is that it? I get it. Okay, sure. Jump on over to the Colab notebook. Let's do that first. We'll download and then upload. I see what you're talking about. Did you open up the Colab notebook that was called Generate HTML?
No, I didn't.
No, that's fine. I know I was kind of rushing a little bit there at the end. It was a lot of steps. Let's.
I think I could get it here.
Yeah. Yeah, there it is on the
Okay.
far right. Yeah, go ahead and fire that bad boy up. Okay.
Oh, that's not. Oh, is this it?
Yeah, this is. I just added that to the top. So go ahead and run each cell one by one. Until you get to the one that says write HTML. Yeah, run anyway. Mm-hmm. Yep, run that one and the next one. And then run this one. Okay. Now, just to the left, go ahead and stop. That's good enough. Yeah, right there.
Right.
Just to the left, click on yes, click on that folder icon. And right-click scatterplot.html. Or maybe it's the dots. Yeah, there it is, download. Okay, now this should be somewhere in your downloads folder. Yep, show in folder. Yep. Now go, yes, go and drag that or upload that scatter plot to your GitHub repo.
Oh, okay. Oh, the GitHub.
Yeah, in GitHub, exactly, right there. Yep. Now scroll down a little bit. And you'll see now the commit button will appear a little bit lower.
Oh, so this is okay. So this is
Yeah.
okay.
Now go ahead and commit those changes. You can put a message if, yep, new version or something. Nice.
Oh, okay.
And now when you go to settings,
And
go up to the top. Settings, yep. Scroll down a little bit. Here we go, GitHub Pages, your site is published at. Go ahead and click that green link.
oh, okay. I didn't even see that. Okay.
Oh, but you're deploying from the master branch. We need to deploy from docs. No, you're good. Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, click that and let's see what it gives us. Yep, and there's your bar chart. It worked.
Okay.
And if you try it again, you can change the numbers so that the bars fluctuate. Go through the
Oh.
whole process of download and upload, and you'll have a new version of the same chart.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Yeah, that answered my question.
Yeah, good stuff. Way to go.
Thanks.
Looks like Alan and Winter are still here. Guys, how's it going?
Hey, I'm just trying to go through the second part of the homework and the third part. I was just trying to follow through. It just kind of just blew through it real quick, but I'll poke around again tonight. But when you were saying press the the little play button, it would
Yes.
actually error for me for the one that I copied over from Notebook 2. I don't know. It's giving a name error. I don't know if I have to fix something on there.
Can you show me your screen?
Sure. I don't use Zoom, so let's see. Share screen. There it is. Stop one. Hold on.
How's it going, Alan?
I just got this laptop.
Okay.
It's the new everything is like locked. I can't figure out how to unlock everything, but I have to log off and log back on for me to change the setting to allow Zoom to share screen.
I understand. I know what you're talking about. Can you take a screenshot of it and
Yeah,
drop it
sure,
into Slack? That way I can at least see what you're dealing with.
sure. All right.
Okay, there it is. All right, let's see here. Let me zoom in on that. And I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so you got this error message that says name go is not defined, right?
Oh, I have to.
You have to run
okay, I
the
have to
cells
import.
before it. Yeah, the import, exactly. Try that and see if it solves it.
Got it. Nope, that worked. Okay, yeah, I didn't see that one over there. Got it.
Right.
Yeah, I'll go. I can go ahead and follow through what's on the video.
Okay, good stuff. Hit me with questions, okay?
Cool.
All right, guys, I am going to sign off for tonight. I will see you on Wednesday, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.